right, greetings. Welcome to another Sounds of Solar podcast. Today I'm joined by my esteemed colleagues, as usual, who are...
Prahlad Shivshankran here again.
Russell Hamilton.
Yeah, and we've got... Thank you guys, of course, for being here with me.
Of course.
We've got a good show. It's all about some solar myths, some solar reliability, the environmental impacts, and then balancing whatever this thing is that we seem to dub the solar coaster. So before we get to that, we got to talk about something else. I want to talk about one thing important to me. We got to go back to racing. MotoGP World Championship. Maybe you guys not so familiar yet, but you will be, and so will our listeners. We have a great championship battle. Pecco Bagnaia is factory Ducati team. Jorge Martin, satellite Ducati team, also riding two factory bikes, 2023. They're in Sepang in Malaysia this weekend. It's going to be wonderful. I just wish you guys... I just want to talk to you about this, but we can't.
Why?
Why?
Because you don't know.
Just educate us.
These guys are the best riders in the world on the best motorcycles that have ever been developed. It's the most unbelievable sport ever. F1 doesn't hold a candle to MotoGP. It doesn't.
Are they electrifying bikes?
Yes, Ducati is the sole manufacturer of the Moto E World Championship.
Now I might care. I might
watch. They're impressive. They're setting lap times near the Moto 3 bikes, which are the lightweight class. Mm-hmm. So the 250 single cylinder bikes, which are considerably lighter, way lighter than the electric bikes. But the technology is pretty impressive. We're getting there.
Nice.
But yeah, I just can't wait to see what happens. We got 3 rounds left: Sepang, Qatar, and Valencia. The championship battle is going to go all the way to Valencia. So,
how long are these races? Are you
45 minutes? Okay. They're just a one tank of fuel, basically. So there's components of tire management in them and fuel management. Everything. The whole race needs to be managed, and it's crazy. It's crazy. You know about racing.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
I'm not just a sprint car fan. I love any type of racing. So, I might not know the details of MotoGP, but I do. I know of it, and I'd watch it.
I had to throw the 100%. Plug in for the listeners. It's just not that popular in the United States, which is a crying shame. But anyway, what about you guys? I just want to throw that plug in for me. What about you? What else is happening? What's going on this weekend? What's happening?
I can talk about, I know last time I said my trip to Utah.
Yeah.
I have another trip coming up, which
this
I can
is
talk
also,
about.
No, imagine how much PTO. Imagine how much
travel.
PTO these guys on the PV side get.
Whoa. I feel like we don't get enough. I don't know.
Okay, a little bit about your trip, and then we're going to come to Russ and talk about sprint cars.
So I'm going to be traveling to Tulum, Mexico. So
wait, where? What?
Yeah. So end of December, that's when wife and I are going to go to Tulum. We're going to, just spend about a week. This is the east coast of Mexico. So
Gulf of Mexico.
Not in Baja? Or, wait, east coast? No, that's the west coast.
Yeah, so it'd be like Gulf of Mexico area.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So, we're pretty excited about that. So.
Okay, that's a good time to go. Anytime in Minnesota, especially February and March. I'm getting out of here in March. I'm doing it. We're going south somewhere.
Nice.
So, Russ, sprint cars, anything?
World of Outlaws season ended.
Yeah.
Brad Sweet, he won his 5th consecutive championship.
Yeah.
It was very exciting. Some really exciting sprint car news is there was Brad Sweet and his brother-in-law, Kyle Larson, who's probably the greatest race car driver ever. Last year they started their own racing series, midweek racing series, and this was the first year that they did it. So midweek, just during the week, they call it high limit, pays out $23,000 per show to win, and they bought there's a third circuit that runs weekends with Outlaw, the competition with the Outlaws, and it's the All Stars, and High Limit bought the All Stars. And so Brad Sweet is now leaving the World of Outlaws, which is considered the best league in the world.
Yep.
And he's going to be running the High Limit Series next year, which is it's pretty huge news. So it's shaking it up a little bit.
Is this when all the pro golfers went to the Live? Remember this?
Yeah. So it's interesting to see. We'll see who leaves the World of Outlaws to go run this series, and it'll be interesting to see.
World of Outlaws is the best name for a series. I think we should probably rename the podcast Solar Outlaws.
Solar Outlaws.
Yeah.
I like it. Rebrand that. Let's do that. So.
Anyway, All right, so the first topic I want to dive into is like some misconceptions, some solar myths. I mean, there's so much out there that we could probably spend an entire podcast just talking about this. What do you guys think about this? I mean, there's I don't even know where to start. Who wants to take it? This is just a limitless topic.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of misconceptions out there. I think people, change is hard. And I think this is no different. And I think there's a huge industry out there that this, going to renewables directly impacts their livelihood. And so there's a lot of, questions and myths and, false information out there just about solar.
Yeah, and definitely we need to, especially because of our influence in the industry and the kind of work we do, I think it's our responsibility to demystify these myths.
True.
So I think even when I started, I had this similar questions as, okay, does solar work in the winter? So that's later I found out that's kind of a big myth that it does work in the winter. And I think like in our previous podcast, how we were talking about spectrums and all that good stuff, like you realize that, panels are reliant on the rays of the sun and not really the temperature that it's being, the ambient temperature. So I think that's a big myth that a lot of people ask about that from the residential standpoint, commercial, and So.
Well, I guess even just piggybacking off of that, and this topic we can talk about a little bit later is, do panels work, solar work when it's cloudy? They do.
Yep.
Efficiency obviously drops, but it's up to 80% efficient during a cloudy and overcast day. So it's another myth that it won't work if it's cloudy outside.
Right. And this is going back to our previous episode where we talked about battery systems. I mean, this is why batteries exist. This is why projects are all, kind of universally, probably in the next 10 years, going to have battery solution systems because we're going to even out that distribution of high energy output, low energy output, and create basically a flat line at all times. So that makes a lot of sense. One thing I wanted to go back to what you mentioned about displacing workers. I think there's the negative aspect to look at that, and then people should really flip that to the positive and be like, there is so much, and this is the way I think we look at it. There is so much opportunity in renewables right now. I mean, this is the dawn of renewable energy. So folks who were working in energy before, I think have a great opportunity because this is translating these skills. And secondly, I mean, personally speaking, I didn't know anything about what I do now when I started. I had about 10 years of experience in structural engineering in various forms coming into it, so I had a background, but like I didn't know how to design a solar pile. Yeah. And it's like, and it's way more complex than I ever thought it was going to be, which is cool. But, our industry needs smart people, and I think there's opportunities there for a lot of different people who you don't, it's just the classic thing, like kids coming out of college, like every job needs 3 to 5 years of experience. Yeah. That's great. That's probably the ideal situation, but we need people. We need people. Like, we need people. We need smart people, and it kind of doesn't matter, what your background is in a lot of ways. Like this industry will teach you what you need to know, and the demand is there. So,
and you talk. That's a good point. I'm part of our recruiting process here. I interview for folks, and trying to find experienced renewable energy engineers is very difficult.
Extremely difficult. The demand way outweighs any surplus capacity we have.
But we have shifted our focus, and we have found gems in people who have experience in other industries who have no renewable, experience, and they come in with their 5 to 15 years of experience in something different and immediately make an impact. The other part of it is, like I was saying in a previous podcast, that we really are trend setting, the industry and solving the difficult problems of our industry, and setting that solution. And so having these other folks coming with these other backgrounds really helps to bring a different perspective to these problems where, I work specifically with studies. Studies are done for all types of energy projects. Yep. So even though, somebody might have 10 years of experience doing studies, say for nuclear or coal or fire or coal or gas or whatever else, it's not the same as renewable, but they come in and they're like, they have these different ideas, and they see ways to make efficiencies, and they see ways to improve the process, or to solve the problem.
Yeah.
So
and a lot of these sites, like oil and gas especially, they're all running underground, and we still need to like build around that. So their expertise and their knowledge will definitely help out.
That's
Just
a great
to add
point.
to what
Yeah.
Russ was saying, like we don't have that expertise, but they do, right? So bringing a different background, I think a different background just definitely helps out, and then they can come and provide guidance that we didn't otherwise have.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Speaking for myself, like I there is so much opportunity out there in this industry. Like it just behooves me that I'm my old industry, like it just felt like a dead end for me, honestly. Yep. Well, I was not the right fit, but like honestly, that was just like a clock in, clock out. Oh, did my 30 years.
Yeah.
See ya. I'm done now. That's not how it is here. And it's, so it's a very exciting time. Moving on to, I think one other thing we want to talk about, some of these environmental things. Like what about the land usage surrounding solar? Obviously, there's no dispute. It takes a lot of land to build a utility scale solar project. While that may be viewed as a con, obviously the pros are it's a renewable energy source. What's some of the other narrative around the land usage?
Just some stats on that. Like I think I was listening to another podcast, and I was reading some articles.
You were listening to another podcast? Not
Why are you
ours
cheating on
only?
us,
You don't like the sound of your own voice?
No, I don't actually. No, but like I think what they were saying is if farmers in the United States can be convinced to share just 1% of their land with solar panels, that would generate 20% of the country's electricity needs. So, which is kind of crazy. And then
what was the percentage?
20%.
20%. That's 1% trade-off
1%
for 20%.
20%. Yeah.
And let's say, for argument's sake, that 1% is all edible crops. Okay.
Yep.
So this is the point I want to make here is guess what percentage of food is wasted in the United States?
Yeah. 40%.
Well, you saw the notes.
Is it?
It is 40%.
I didn't look at the
40%.
I didn't look at the notes. I didn't see that part.
It's 40%.
Is it 40%?
40%. And
wow.
I hear this, obviously we're on the inside and we know things, but like I don't think it's that far-fetched, to look up a stat like that and like understand what that means. But it's all provoked by that comment. Like I hear it a lot, like, oh, just hate to see all that useful land go to waste. Or like, oh, solar's it's an ugly land. It's like, or the productive land. I hate to see that productive land go to waste. And it's like, well, what about the 40% of the food that goes in the trash?
Sure.
Like, there's just
is that number a global number or the U.S.?
That's specifically to the U.S.
Okay.
Wow. I'm curious if it's higher or lower in the elsewhere. I feel like it's probably
higher.
Higher. Really?
I think so.
Jordan, you want to check that out?
I'm interested. Let's get a
No, I'm
fact
just
check on it.
talking like in terms of technology.
I just think the U.S. is so
has.
wasteful, so I feel like we got to be setting the record for that, maybe.
But do one thing, also to keep in mind, states like Texas.
Yeah.
A lot of the projects I'm doing, they're kind of in areas where
there's nothing
there.
We're in a damn thing there.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Is that because of over irrigation or like over grazing or something?
We're the third most wasteful.
Oh wait,
the
let's
third
guess.
most
Let's guess
wasteful.
who the next two.
Canada.
Canada?
Number one.
Oh
Canada?
wow!
Come on, Canada.
Oh my
what
God.
are we doing here?
What are they
They're not that
doing?
nice.
I think we got one Canadian at EVS.
Yeah,
Todd.
Well,
we're
he's
gonna have to
now
have a talk with
American
him.
citizen,
American.
but-
We're gonna talk to Todd. Be like, so Todd, what'd you have for dinner last night? He's like, I just threw it away. Well, anyway, so the land usage. I mean, obviously, these projects take a lot of land, but I think if you look at a satellite map, there's a lot of land out there, and there's a lot of opportunity in agrivoltaics, right?
Yep.
A lot of opportunity to what was the term you used earlier, Brady?
Oh, I just and like
Stacked usage or something?
stacking.
Value stacking. Yeah.
So it's
And
sort of like an industry term now. Yeah, go.
Let's say explain what ag.
What is agrivoltaics?
Yeah,
I think
agrivoltaics.
just again like value stacking the land, like making like if a typical land was going to be used just for solar, then that's just a single use. And now instead of having a single use, we're trying to figure out, okay, can we actually like do some kind of agricultural farming there? Can we do I don't know, grazing there, those kind of things. So just making more use of the land. I think that's essentially what agrivoltaics is.
We should get
an expert on this.
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
a very,
definitely.
very interesting topic too, because it's going to impact us on the engineering side as well in the future. But yeah,
Yeah, we can talk about it.
we can. Yeah. So
I know you wanted to bring up the ampacity impact.
Oh,
We can talk about it.
capacity, here it
We can
is.
talk
so
about it.
like with agrivoltaics, I think one of the advantages is like the main. So what there are 3 C's, I believe, that they believe in people in the agrivoltaic space. Like I think it's conservation, critters, and crops.
Critters.
Yeah, so those are the kind of 3 things that they believe in, and yeah, like you can right now a lot, like I think Arizona State, or there's Arizona, Michigan, Massachusetts, and Colorado are doing a lot of work in this space. But basically, they found out that because of the panels, the soil underneath the panels are much cooler.
Mm-hmm.
So that allows for less water to be used.
Oh yeah,
And
definitely.
and you can also use that space to grow crops, maybe like peppers and those kind of
Is
things.
the thought to? I mean, it's probably mixed, but like, is the thought to grow under the panels or in like the shading gap or whatever?
I think
and then,
it's both. It's both, and like so that's where like I think both are possible. I think there's still a lot more research that is happening as we speak on like what kind of crops you can grow, and there's actually like a website where you can kind of go in and then take a look at what's the best thing to grow in your space, which is again a conversation that happens with the developer, the landowner, and at the very early stage to figure out what kind of value stack works in this particular land, in this particular area, those kind of things. So I think it's called Clearinghouse. Yeah, that they've got a website that's pretty cool.
Sure.
You can go take a look at it. So but yeah, you can grow crops in those areas, but again, it comes down to how we would do the design. We need to like expand the space for tractors and mowers to come in and do those kind of things. So that's still in R&D phase, I would say. There's not a lot deployed.
But it seems very feasible, very feasible to do this. And like, I feel like in that situation, everyone wins, especially the landowner who's like not only collecting revenue from an agricultural source, but also like producing power. Like, that's pretty nice.
Yeah. I think one concern would just be, there might be more time in construction to make this viable, right?
Yep.
And that's obviously the biggest
more parties to like interface with too.
Well, the biggest cost of the solar project is the construction part of it. So, that might be interesting, because like you wanted to bring up ampacity with it being a little bit cooler, but I was thinking more like if you're going to plant some sort of crop, how do you till that? How do you maintain that soil? Now, do we have to put our cables deeper? Do we have to have some sort of physical protection for them? Could be something,
Yeah, and along the same lines, like as this starts to progress and there's more research on this and it starts becoming more of general practice or general deployment, part of the general deployment, like it's going to affect engineering designs as well, like to what Ross was saying, like if it's cooler underneath, maybe we can run more cables, like those are like viable options that we can think about, because cooler land, maybe we can fit more, maybe we can, all those kind of things. So like it's very interesting to the whole topic itself is quite interesting. So and also, like I was going to tell you, from a structural perspective, it does have impacts as well. Like if the farmer thinks that this land if he wants cattle to come in to the land, then the only way you can do that is if you have
they can't figure out where to walk. They can't walk. They'll just walk into the panel.
No, I heard sheep are the recommended ones, because goats
will
they
climb
jump
on it.
they climb on it.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah,
that's hilarious. Well, if you had to bet, what do you think the maximum panel tilt angle on the tracker is that a goat can stand on?
90.
90?
Have you not seen these goats that live on cliffs?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're 90 degree and they just
just find a way.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, we saw a bunch when we were in Norway, like little goats just like they just find a way, and it's like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. They should do the maintenance.
Right. That's a good point. So moving forward, there's issues with solar. Obviously, there's material usage, there's mining. I mean, these are things that are well documented. I don't know how into detail we need to go. I think there's a positive spin on that, though, that is worth highlighting, because this is what I was going to say. Yeah, in the agrivoltaics world, like all these things we were just talking about, like, what about this? What about this? We could do this. We could do that. And that doesn't exist. Man, in traditional like buildings when I used to work in, what did we do? We did every project like we did the last one. They've been doing that for 45 years.
Yep.
Like,
and same thing in substation design. It was always following the client standards that they had developed for the last 40 years.
Yeah. So, moving forward into the topic I was presenting here, when we're talking about like the other side of solar in not the power generation phase, but the repower phase. What are we doing with the old modules? Like, there's this tremendous opportunity for advanced recycling of materials, reuse of materials, additional opportunities that are totally out there for people.
So let me ask this question, and maybe I don't know the answer, because these 25 years, right?
This is a typical average design life for a solar installation, utility scale.
So how old is this industry right now? I don't think it's 25 years.
No,
right?
I mean,
my point I'm trying to get at is an opportunity. That industry of recycling will become an economic,
there's
stronghold.
so much money. There's so much money in it.
In the near future to recycle all these projects.
And for people who don't know, like the way these projects typically work is that 25-year period is a leased land period. And at that end of life, the project will be decommissioned. Part of the reason of that from a structural standpoint is that the driven piles that are supporting the tracker mechanisms, the inverters and the equipment, those have been exposed to 25 years of corrosion in the ground. And we designed for that. That is the design life. I don't know of any structural engineer who would put their professional license on the line to say, these piles have been in the 50,000 piles have been in the ground for 25 years. Let's do 25 more. Right. Like maybe you could do some testing, but I think the stronger value is, who knows what's going to be happening in 25 years, but they're going to recycle all those piles and build a new plant because the technology is going to be
going to evolve as well.
Like we were saying, perovskite, last episode, like that plant, that installation could either be twice as powerful or half as small.
Right.
So we'll see in the future. All right. So I think we covered the environmental stuff a lot. What about the reliability of solar? People have a lot of questions out there. Does the solar work when the sun's not shining? Well, if it's at night, probably not. But we have some systems to fix that. So what about it? There's cloud. What happens?
Yeah, I touched on it earlier. I mean, when there's cloud cover, there's that, or overcast, there's that misconception that solar doesn't work. It does work. It's say at the worst case, 80% of its capacity during a cloudy day or an overcast day. We talked about BESS, battery storage, energy storage systems that augment also during nighttime and cloudy days to produce a more constant power load. Also, there's other technologies that are always being developed, opportunities, like you said. One of the things that I just was researching that I thought was really interesting is there's some solar thermal energy storage systems that are being developed. Well, basically, they're using the heat from the sun to convert into electricity to be able to use that at nighttime. Yeah. Which I think would be really interesting.
That is. I remember hearing about off-grid housing kind of stuff, and like you put a solar water heater on your roof. It's all black tubing that's basically a heat exchanger, and you have hot water, which is this is a very nice solution. But
I think another topic that I came across, which is similar to what Ross was saying, is thermal energy storage in general, where they're storing heat in molten rocks, and then that can last a long time. And then when you need that heat, they can just send that heat out to, let's say, an apartment or something like that, right? Like it's mostly for an industrial purposes, but the idea being that the heat is coming from a renewable source. So that's another area that I think is pretty cool. Just thinking about how you can make industrial heat come from renewable sources.
And related to these is also pumped hydro. I think that's been a hot news item in the last year, and that's correct me if I'm wrong, the concept behind pumped hydro is you pump the hydro up at nighttime when rates are low, and then when you need it, you deploy it during the day. Is that right?
During peak times.
Peak times, something like this. So you see the cost advantage, you're running motors when the energy is cheap, storing the energy, deploying it when it's needed. And I mean, that's a novel concept. I mean, yeah, the economics, if they work, then fair play. So what else about the reliability? I mean, these projects now, the technology we have, I mean, if you go to a site, you were just at a site visit. Did you go to the control room or the O&M trailer and see the production stats?
I did not. So none of these were actually commissioned.
Oh, they
so
weren't commissioned
I did not.
yet.
I think that's my next goal, to try and go to something which is completely commissioned, which will be cool to like look at the SCADA systems and see how everything works. But like in terms of just reliability, I think we can talk about like equipment reliability, which is improving. Like I think typical lifespan for an inverter is about, I think it was 7 years, now it's 10 years, I believe. I think that's an improvement. And a lot of the times people are looking at modular approaches because they know failure rates are, the failure is inevitable. So I think having like a modular approach so that the inverters can last the entire lifespan for the project, which is 25 years.
Right.
And because this was a big topic of, like, this is a market in itself, like retrofitting.
Definitely.
Which we do that here too.
Yeah. Do we do that?
I've been working with Mike McKinney on some retrofit.
Interesting.
Where, certain things failed and they need to replace them. So,
Yeah, definitely.
Sorry,
I mean, and all utility scale projects have at least one planned repower is the technical term. Modules and inverters and any other relevant equipment, and that's just a fact of life for these. And the good news is the technology is scaling at a point that, I mean, not only production but like efficiencies that the next repower, hopefully in 7 to 10 years, is going to get the rest of the project lifespan 25, 30, 35 years. Like we'll see. Yeah, I think these are, I mean, exciting things. Like these projects. Like if you go to an O&M trailer and on a project and just see like, wow, we're doing like 175 megawatts of power right now, and you look out at the installation and see like nothing's happening relatively. Like it's just quiet.
Yeah.
I remember when I was out in Arizona on a site and seeing, granted, okay, it's nuclear, this quasi renewable, quasi sustainable power source, but what you see when you look at Palo Verde is just an insane amount of steam emitting.
Yep.
So it looks like a very, kind of dystopian, hardcore, industrial setup. And then you look at the PV array and it's just like very tranquil and very zen. And I like that. I thought that was an interesting dichotomy there. But
and also reliability, we should definitely touch on reliability of batteries as well. A lot of times people say, batteries are not safe. And now there was that episode where like phones were catching on fire in aeroplanes because of like...
When was this?
This was very recent.
Really?
Yeah.
In today's world?
Yeah, I don't know.
Wait, what?
Yeah. So there's a bunch of them that
caught on fire?
Yeah.
Not in
an airplane.
Yeah,
in the cabin.
In the cabin.
What?
So because they typically ask you to keep your batteries in cabin luggage, right?
That's what I was wondering. Because if they're unpressurized,
if there is a event, at least it's visible and you can kind of do something about it. But if it's in the cabin, if it's checked in, then
I see Dave putting his phone down.
Whoa, phone's starting to get pretty hot here.
But yeah, lithium phosphate batteries are a lot more. Like I think they have higher temperatures at which they fail, so they are a lot more reliable. And yes, you do have an incident once in a while, but I think battery companies are working on the reliability. They're also looking at different technologies that can, so that thermal runaway, which is the biggest issue.
Thermal runaway in batteries is like, I think that's going to be a hot topic. It is. It already is in chemistries. And like, I know, like the Ambri liquid metal battery, that's obviously a solution of, I forget the chemistry offhand, but like there's molten metal in it that creates the battery chemistry. But technically that has no thermal runaway concerns. Once the battery stops working, it just goes into a solid state instead of catching on fire and ruining the entire BESS installation, which, interesting points. Any other thoughts on the reliability of utility scale solar and things of this nature?
Can't think of it.
Guys are quiet on this one.
Blank.
Yeah.
Moving on, one last topic. So it's this concept of the solar coaster. It's the day-to-day nature of the crazy world of consulting that we live in, I mean, how does one even begin to balance this? I mean, we receive requests, like it was actually, I think, a good point, going back to batteries, with things, the design changing at 60%, 90%, how you interface with that. I mean, what do you do in that situation? Meditate.
Yeah, it's a great question. The biggest impacts is schedule, right? Always going to be schedule. So that's really what I focus on, is the schedule with the client.
That's all you can do.
That's all you can do.
That's our job as consulting engineers, is to try to meet schedules as best we can.
So if something's going to change, I focus on well, first I try to figure out what's that change look like and what's the impacts that it's going to have on the design as well as the studies. And then I try to come up with a reasonable time frame, right? Obviously, if we can keep the original schedule, that helps our clients tremendously, but they also are very understanding that if we have to redesign something because something's changed, they're usually very open about, compromising and coming to some sort of an arrangement that works for everybody. But it's learning. Sometimes it's trial and error, trying to figure out what does this change do. I think one of the biggest interesting parts of this is, what tribal knowledge is. Obviously, everybody knows what tribal knowledge is, but a lot of this new technology, there's not the tribal knowledge of knowing, what impacts something. You can look at something and say, I'm sure for you, for structural or even for design, you might look at a change and you would know right off the top of your head from experience.
Yeah.
Is it going to have an impact? Is it not going to have an impact?
Right.
And the challenge can be with some of these newer technologies is I don't know if that has an impact or doesn't have an impact. And then you have to go do it to figure it out, where I think that's an interesting challenge that we have.
Another thing, this is maybe slightly, might be a different topic, but like that we covered in a different episode, but we need to be ready for those changes as well. And what we can do, if that's automation, if that is some level of, because what they're relying on us at the end of the day is speed. Mm-hmm. The minute we send something out and it's ready for construction, the construction crew can go. So the real, our role is essentially to get this out as fast as possible at a good with a good quality, right? So, right. And I think what we need to challenge ourselves internally as well to figure out what we can do to bridge that gap. And then that's whether that's automation, whether that is the number of people working on it, whether that's predicting these changes, those kind of things. So that's something that I think we should just generally internally think about. So,
and to be fair, for every project that I work on, like that is always part of my plan is some sort of equipment change or design criteria change.
Yeah,
like I'm definitely, in my mind and in my schedule, my own internal schedule, I'm constantly.
You've seen it on every project.
There isn't a project.
The modules change, the inverters maybe change, etc. There's a land usage.
Yeah, well, and information also, right? So like getting information for the material, for the equipment, at 10%, 30%, 60%, even sometimes 90%, we don't have it.
Right.
So we're having to make some, educated assumptions, and then sometimes, unfortunately, we get that, and it's very different. Mm-hmm. Most of the time, we're good, but there's definitely times when it's like, oh, it's completely different. Yeah. So. Yeah. That's another, challenge. But we do move forward. We take that and we use part of our tribal knowledge that we have is, hey, a project that used this same inverter or the same module, we have data sheets from previous projects that we can reference, but we still need to get it for this project because it might be different.
Yeah.
Definitely need to work very closely with developers where possible, whenever this is expected.
Right.
Like as much as possible, working with them closely to figure out what they're trying to do at the end of the day, because I think they're the ones that have insight on like land use, all these kind of different AHJ requirements and whatnot, and maybe understanding where they're coming from will help us and help them like figure out a solution going forward. So whether that's us getting involved in a lot of the preliminary design or analysis, maybe that's production estimates using PV-Syst or stuff like that. So
I do think I had something good there. I think you bring up a good point of that. Essentially what I was going to say is I think it's important to understand, almost over communicate with the client to make sure that you understand what their needs are, because we might be sitting here assuming we know what their needs are, and we're basing decisions off of that maybe that's not accurate, and we can, they might not need maybe to the level of completeness that we think that they do need for a certain reason. I'll give you an example. Sometimes we have certain studies that we would do, but we don't have the information, right? And so we call it garbage in, garbage out. We don't have the information, but if our clients are like, we need this study to check a box so financing can be approved for the next phase, understanding that need, then we can provide that to them instead of saying, well, we need this information, we can't do the study till we get it. Do you know what I mean? So like having that over communication with the client, I think is extremely important.
Right. So shifting a little bit this discussion, this is kind of EVS specific, which also one-stop shop helps a lot of this stuff. I mean, we talked about that in a previous episode. What about big picture? Pros of solar, it's cheap. The efficiencies are skyrocketing. Value stacking opportunities. I mean, limitless opportunities. Cons, I mean, obviously any material that is manufactured into another material, there's mining concerns, there's waste created, there's also the repower, recycling, all of this. Any other things about, how to balance this general picture of what needs to go into this puzzle to make it all make sense moving forward?
Well, that's a big question. That's a big question.
Right.
I think just continuing to have conversations and give good information and try to help educate people is gonna be huge, because at the end of the day, the pros of renewable energy are so much greater than the cons.
Yeah. And you have to start somewhere, right? It's like, I think there's a lot of feeling out there that it's like, well, but you still have to mine it, or but you have to mine everything,
right?
Like, we need to take these steps to ensure, get to whatever is going to be the ideal future, which we're never going to realize.
And I think the underlying fact is we need to have more people in renewable. The only way we can, let's say, do if it's recycling, we need more people working on it, which means we need more people who understand the problem, who understand solar. So I think it all starts at that level where people are if they need to be doing research to help figure this out, they need to be experts at this from maybe at a college level or something. So they need to start early. And I think we need more people fixing these issues, because these are issues and these are areas where, I guess, being a capitalist, I think this is places where you can make money, you can fix the problem, and then you can make some money doing it.
Yep.
So,
there's a ton of opportunity. I mean, it's crazy. So that's the message, I think, to all the listeners out there.
I think at the end of the day, realizing that this is a booming industry, right? It has opportunities, like you said, for huge economic as well as environmental impacts. Let's just get people more involved in this process that have, come from other industries. And, I think it's going to be a really good thing. So.
Right. And we have a lot of tools at EVS to help this transition and, change to green tech and decarbonization, all these nice buzz terms. But ultimately the goal is we're going to make clean power for the planet, which is a wonderful thing. So, gentlemen, thank you for joining me on the Sounds of Solar podcast once again. We'll be back in, some amount of time. The listener will just magically probably have another episode, although some time will have passed. But
sure.
And then also, if you are listening or viewing, you probably hear this on every show you listen to or watch, but please leave a comment, a rating, a review, message us. Any feedback is welcome, and it helps us tremendously. So with that, we'll see you next time.